Hey guys, Bios Ramos and the Miami Dolphins beat the Cincinnati Bengals today, 35-38 in the Tank Bowl. That's why I have this helmet, some military gear on, some camel pants, even a boot. I even got my grandma here in the video. Come here, what up?
Yay!
Bang, bang. Got my grandma here.
Miami Dolphins.
So, with all that being said, let's get into this video.
Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team.
Alrighty, so all that being said, Miami Dolphins improved to 4-11. Meanwhile, the Bengals dropped to 1-14, pretty much locking up the #1 pick for them. And it puts us all the way at the 5th pick, I was hearing. How do I feel about that? Indifferent. I really don't care, honestly. Like I've been telling you guys, I enjoy seeing this team win. It's huge for the Miami Dolphins to get these wins. Just because it builds confidence and it instills a winning way in towards these guys. And if you can win a quarter of your 16-game season while your team is supposed to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, yada yada yada, they still went out there and got the job done. Even though inferior team, Bengals are really horrible, and it was 12-35 with about 6 minutes left in the game. Literally 6 minutes and 11 seconds left is when they scored, I believe. Yeah, 6 minutes and 11 seconds. And that's when it all started going downhill. But luckily, the Dolphins managed to close off the game and get the win. Now, before I get into any of that, let's go into the scoring summary. The scoring summary goes something like this. Touchdown, Miami Dolphins. Christian Wilkins, 1-yard touchdown reception from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Then we have a 7-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Parker for us going up 14-0 in the first quarter. Second quarter, Bengals score a field goal, and it makes it 3-14. The Dolphins score another touchdown. Mike Gesicki, 31-yard pass, and the whole play I was screaming, Mike Gesicki, Mike Gesicki, Mike Gesicki, boom, touchdown, awesome. And then the Bengals close off with a field goal, 6-21. Then we start off the third quarter. Dolphins score a touchdown, 6-28. Bengals score a touchdown following us, 12-28. Then we score another touchdown. Myles Gaskin, 2-yard run, and that was 12-35. And then Bengals scored 3 touchdowns in a row, 19, 27, 35. With the final second, no time left in the game. Bengals were down 8 heading into that final drive, and they scored a touchdown. And then not only that, they got the 2-point conversion twice. It is what it is. But then in overtime, to the very last second, Jason Sanders kicks a field goal as time is expiring. Calls a timeout with 4 seconds left. Miami Dolphins get the win and officially win the Tank Bowl. Now let's go into some team stats before I go into any individual stats. Cincinnati, 430 total yards of offense. Miami Dolphins, 502 total yards of offense. Turnover, Cincinnati got a turnover, and Miami also got a turnover. Time of possession. Normally this would be at an hour's time, but it wasn't because we went into overtime. 33.36 minutes and 36 seconds. Meanwhile, the Miami Dolphins, 36 minutes, 24 seconds. First downs, 25 for the Bengals, 29 for the Miami Dolphins. And now finally, before we go into individual stats, we have the AFC North standings. Baltimore is 13-2. They secured the #1 seed in the AFC. Then we have Pittsburgh Steelers, 8-7. And then we also have, they took an L to the New York Jets this week. Then we finally have the Cleveland Browns, 6-9. And then lastly, the Bengals at 1-14. Miami, meanwhile, we're 4-11, dead last AFC East, but the Patriots are 12-3, and the Buffalo Bills are 10-5. And the Jets got another win today against the Steelers. 6 and 9. I mean, what else can I say? What else? So now when we look at the box score, we have Andy Dalton going 33 for 56 on 396 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. 4 sacks for a loss of 25 yards. I was hoping and praying we would get a safety to win this game. Deja vu from about 8 or so years, 6 years ago when we played them Thursday Night Football, Halloween, and Cameron Wake got a sack on Andy Dalton in the end zone to close off the game, which also went into overtime. So was just hoping and praying a little bit there. But let's go over to the Dolphins, where we have Ryan Fitzpatrick going 31 for 52, 419 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Sacked twice for a loss of 13 yards. He had a pretty good game. Wouldn't say it was the best, but he had a good game. Now when we look at the rushing stats, Joe Mixon went 21 for 50 yards, no touchdowns, longest was 9 yards. John Ross III went 2 for 6 yards, longest was 5 yards. And Giovanni Bernard went 2 for 3 yards, and longest was 3 yards. Now, when we go to the Miami Dolphins, we have Myles Gaskin having 16 carries, 55 yards, 1 touchdown, longest was 15. Patrick Laird, 8 carries for 17 yards. Albert Wilson, 1 carry for 9 yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 5 carries for 9 yards. And Delance Turner, 4 carries for 6 yards. I think he was number 34. He was a guy who has been added as of late to the Miami Dolphins. Now when we go to receiving, we have Tyler Boyd for the Cincinnati Bengals. 9 receptions, 128 yards. Wow. 2 touchdowns. Longest was 34, had 15 targets. John Ross III, 6 receptions, 84 yards. 34 longest, 13 targets. Tyler Eifert, 4 receptions, 57 yards, 1 touchdown. 25 yards was his longest, 8 targets. Then we have Alex Erickson, 6 receptions, 55 yards. Longest was 19 and a total of 9 targets. CJ Uzomah had 4 receptions for 37 yards, 1 touchdown, 17 yards was his longest, 4 targets. Joe Mixon, 2 receptions, 23 yards, 17 yards was his longest, 2 targets. Giovanni Bernard, 2 receptions, 12 yards, 9 was his longest, 3 targets. Now let's go over to the Miami Dolphins, where we have pretty good numbers. Let's start off with Devontae Parker, 5 receptions, 111 yards, 1 touchdown. Longest was 51 yards. Big play, flea flicker, caught it. Wow, good job, Parker. 15 targets. Didn't catch the ball a lot, but he made the most of it when he did. Now we go to Mike Gesicki, 6 receptions, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12 targets. 31 yards was his longest. Albert Wilson, 7 receptions, 79 yards, 35 was his longest yardage, and 7 targets. Good job. Now we have Isaiah Ford, 5 receptions, 68 yards, 28 yards was his longest, and he had 6 total targets. Isaiah Ford, I think I just went over Isaiah Ford, but I'm going to go over him anyways. 5 receptions, 68 yards, 28 was his longest. Yeah. Then we have Allen Hurns, 2 receptions, 41 yards, longest was 27, 2 targets. Durham Smythe, 2 receptions, 18 yards, longest was 13, 2 targets. Clive Walford, 1 reception, 15 yards, and he had 2 targets. Myles Gaskin, 1 reception, 3 yards, off of 3 targets. And Christian Wilkins, 1 reception, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. And then Patrick Laird, 1 reception, 1 yard. He had a pretty good gain on one, but it got negated off of a penalty, so it didn't count. Now let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals. We have Andy Dalton, 1 fumble, 1 loss, and then we have Andrew Van Ginkel recovering 1 fumble, the one from Andy Dalton. And then for Christian Wilkins, when he got his touchdown, he broke the plane, lost control of the ball after, and then recovered it. So all that in there for you. And then let's go to some defensive stats. I'm only going to highlight some of the key stats here. Sean Williams, 13 total tackles, 8 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 2 QB hits. This is for the Bengals, by the way. Jermaine Pratt, 12 total tackles, 11 solo, 2 tackles for a loss. Then we have Darqueze Dennard, 8 total tackles, 6 solo, 1 QB hit. Let's go to Sam Hubbard, who has 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 QB hit. Jesse Bates had 1 pass deflection, so the Cardinals Dunlap, and he also had 2 QB hits. Nick Vigil, I'm pretty sure that's the guy we used to have on the Dolphins. I'm not too sure. There's another guy in the NFL with Vigo, also has his last name. He had 1 pass deflection. Now let's go to Andrew Billings. He had 1 QB hit. Carl Lawson had 5 QB hits. Greg Maben had 1 pass deflection. Darius Phillips had 3 pass deflections. And Geno Atkins had 1 QB hit. Now for the Miami Dolphins, Jerome Baker was our leading tackler. 12 total tackles, 7 solo, half a sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass deflection. Attaboy, Jerome. Where's my mama? Zach Sealer, 7 total tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 2 pass deflections, 1 QB hit. Good job. This is one of the first games I really see this guy on the field for the Dolphins, and he played pretty well. Next, we have Devon Godchaux, 6 total tackles, 3 solo, half a sack. And then we'll go to Trent Harris, had 5 total tackles, 4 solo, 1 sack. Let's go into some key stats. We have Nick Needham, 1 pass deflection. So did Nate Brooks and Adrian Colbert all had 1 pass deflection. And then Christian Wilkins had 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 QB hit. Andrew Van Ginkel had 1 tackle for a loss, 1 QB hit. Trey Hayes had 1 pass deflection. And that pretty much sums it up really for the Miami Dolphins. Stat-wise, defensively, kick returns. Darius Phillips had 2 returns for 50 yards. Longest was 29 yards. Miami Dolphins had Trevor Davis and Isaiah Ford. Trevor Davis returned for 1 kick for 22 yards, and Isaiah Ford returned 1 for 6 yards. Then when it comes to punt returns, we have Eric Dickerson, who returned 3 punts for 43 yards, and then Darius Phillip returned 1 for -1 yard. Then we go to Trevor Davis. We had 4 returns for 26 yards. And then kicking game, we have Randy Bullock, 2 for 2 on field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points, and his longest was 57. Meanwhile, Jason Sanders went 1 for 2 on field goals, 37 yards was his longest, and 5 for 5 on extra points. Attaboy, Jason. And the field goal he made was the game winner. And lastly, of the stats, Kevin Huber punting for the Cincinnati Bengals, 388 yards, 8 punts. 3 of them were in the 20. Longest was 59 yards. 8 punts. 8 punts for the Bengals. And they still managed to come back into this game and almost win. Meanwhile, the Miami Dolphins, Matt Hack, 6 punts, 294 yards. 2 of them were in the 20, and his longest was 60 yards. And it was probably the one that was down pretty good, to be honest. But all that being said, done jabbering about stats, yada yada yada. Just want to go and talk about some of the good things that happened in this game. Number 1, Devontae Parker surpassed 1,000 yards for the first time in a season ever in his career in the National Football League as a member of the Miami Dolphins. Congrats to Devontae Parker on that. Secondly, I think Fitzpatrick is still our leading rusher. No, really. Fitzpatrick got a lot of receivers involved. I'm going to tell you about how many receivers he got involved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different receivers. And one of them is Christian Wilkins, our number 1 pick from last year, defensive end / tackle, whatever you want to put him at. Whatever. Point is, Miami Dolphins got the win. I'm happy that they got the win, but it did affect their draft stock. Right now, I think it places them, as of right now, as is this video is being made, they're the number 5 pick, and the Bengals are the number 1 pick. If we would have lost to the Bengals today, and by some miracle the Bengals would have won next week and we would have lost, then we would have been the number 1 sole possession of the number 1 pick. But that's over with. Bengals locked it up for good, and it is what it is. Can't really do anything about it now, but nothing before that. I just want to mention how with 6 minutes left in the game in regulation, Dolphins were up 12-35. And then Bengals score 7 points, and then they score another touchdown. They score 8 points with the extra 2 points. They recover onside kick, go up the length of the field, and score a touchdown and the 2-point conversion to tie up this football game and send it to overtime. That is something in the future Miami Dolphins cannot afford to let happen. I know this game really doesn't mean much. Both teams are out of the playoffs. They're really just fighting for draft position. But even then, you want to put your best foot out there and deliver either a win or deliver a great performance. And honestly, if the Dolphins would have lost today, I would have been pretty upset. Like, not because we would have lost to the Bengals, but just because how we would have lost to them. You understand? Being up 12-35 and then losing it, I would have lost in my mind. But at the end of the day, I would have been so upset because it would have put us in a better position for that number 1 pick. But it is what it is. I'm done blabbering. Miami Dolphins have one more game left against the New England Patriots next Sunday, 1 o'clock p.m. And it's at Foxborough. So Dolphins ending the season on the road, closed out the last home game with a W. So I'm proud of that. But that's pretty much it. And also, last video I did not mention the tank bowl. I just want to mention that right now. Did not want to mention it, but tank bowl was in full effect today. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a nice thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the post notification bell option. And if you haven't done it yet, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ByAustinRamos. And check out ByAustinRamos.com. Upload all my videos, articles, yada yada yada, up on there. And lastly, fins up.
Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team.